morning. This is the top of Woodchute Mountain with a beautiful view looking over the Verde Valley. And I'm going to stop here and talk about a classic anime.
Nausicaa, the Valley of the Wind.
Nausicaa, the Valley of the Wind is a classic post-apocalyptic sci-fi adventure anime, a theatrical movie with pronounced ecological and anti-war themes. 1,000 years after technological civilization destroyed itself in the legendary 7 Days of Fire, the world is now mostly a wasteland. Huge forests called the Toxic Jungle or Sea of Corruption cover much of the land. These inimical forests are full of giant insects and lethal spores and vapors. The Valley of the Wind lives peacefully, separated from the toxic jungle by a barren waste, and protected from its drifting spores by a steadily blowing wind that gives the valley its name. Their young princess Nausicaa is a bit unusual. She boldly flies far from the valley in her small personal glider, fearlessly exploring the toxic plants and insects of the forest, and she possesses an inexplicable empathy with those creatures who others fear and hate. But the outside world is about to invade her peaceful little valley. A huge warplane from the larger empire of Tolmechia crashes there. There's a Pejete prisoner on board from a smaller empire that tells of a war among the valley's neighbors. Plus, the ship's cargo is a misshapen blob that may herald the revival of a terrible weapon from the past millennium. Soon the armies of Tolmechia invade the valley, led by their princess, Kushana. She intends to reclaim that weapon with plans to use it to burn down the toxic forest and reclaim the world for humanity, or at least for Tolmechia. As Nausicaa and her people are reluctantly pulled into this conflict, Nausicaa will soon meet some of the people of Pejete on the other side of this conflict, starting with a man named Asbel. In their desperation, the people of Pejete have hatched a terrible, destructive plan of their own for counterattack against Tolmechia. Nausicaa has good reason to oppose both these nations' plans. She opposes Tolmechia's plan to burn down the forest because she's discovered that the toxic forest is actually purifying the air, water, and soil from pollution of the past. She's a strong advocate of coexisting peacefully with all life on the planet, even the giant insects and poisonous plants that humans find lethal. She's a brave, determined, and generally peaceful teen whose personality seems to fascinate everyone, even her enemies. For example, very early in the movie, an old friend of Nausicaa's who wanders the land, Lord Yupa, is reunited with Nausicaa, and he presents her with a small pet, a fox squirrel.
Wow, is that a fox squirrel? I've never seen one.
I hadn't either. Better not touch him. Even the babies are vicious.
It's okay.
Careful.
Nothing to fear. Right? You were just a little scared, weren't you?
That scene perfectly demonstrates how Nausicaa calmly endures and deflects hostility with empathy to turn enemies into friends. This solid, stubborn determination pulls almost everyone under her spell by sheer force of her personality, not just the fox squirrel. Yupa, the people of the valley, the invader Kushana, Asbel, and eventually the people of Pejete. Of course, a machine gun or a gunship can come in real handy if diplomacy fails. Nausicaa isn't always peaceful. She is imperfect, struggling against her own dark temper. In a very early scene, Nausicaa meets Yupa as he's fleeing from an enraged insect, the giant Omu. That magnificent creature, once enraged, loses all reason and chases Yupa far out of the forest. It's Nausicaa who assuages that anger with a few flashbangs and the calming tones of her insect whistle. But just a bit later, in a reversal of roles, when Tolmechia's soldiers invade her castle, it's Nausicaa who loses her temper and goes into a violent rampage, losing all reason, and it's Yupa who must now calm her down. While gentle, Nausicaa is no pacifist, but her appreciation of her own violence makes her quicker to forgive violence in others. And Nausicaa has a lot of violence to overcome to keep those she loves safe. Her natural leadership is such that a mere smile motivates her friends, and even when she's among enemies, she seems somehow to be calmly in charge. The animation is beautiful. It doesn't dazzle so much as charm with gentle grace. I love the scene of Nausicaa landing her small glider, gently spilling air until it settles gently onto the sand like a feather. No one depicts the romance of flight like Miyazaki. His art designs depict the sea of corruption as both implacable destruction and a visual wonderland, showing its natural splendor and beauty while reminding us of the death it brings. Miyazaki will have a larger budget in many of his more spectacular later movies, but this classic's visuals still amaze me. Nausicaa is also the first film score debut of Japanese composer Joe Hisaishi, who's provided this soundtrack for every Miyazaki film since. He's provided some percussive excitement and some soaring orchestral pieces, and even tossed in a few notes from Stephen Sondheim. His exotic, mystical tones match the story's sense of wonder, such as the early opening, where Nausicaa explores the strange, lethal beauty of the toxic jungle.
A perfect Om shell.
Nausicaa, the Valley of the Wind originated as a 1982 serialized manga by Hayao Miyazaki, who says he started drawing it because he was out of work after leaving the Little Nemo and Slumberland project. The now legendary creator says he imagined the character by conflating a minor character from Homer's Odyssey with a Japanese folktale about a princess who loved insects. Whatever, after 2 years, the series was popular enough that he got funding to create a 2-hour theatrical movie based on it. His first completely original production. The rest is history. The manga was far from finished at the time. Miyazaki wouldn't complete his lengthy, complex magnum opus for a dozen years. So he blended some parts of the first chapter to create a more compact, self-contained story that's different, but no less rewarding. During the movie's opening credits, we see designs from a tapestry whose images portend both the manga's future as well as the movie's story. Miyazaki has an instinct for dramatic pacing and a real flair for personalities. But I wonder if today, 30 years older, he'd still find the Valley's old men quite so comically inept. If the story has any faults, it may be that it reaches a smidgen too far at the end to deliver an E.T. emotional flip-flop. When I first saw this movie, it was viewed in a darkened room, based only on a synopsis that the room was too dark to let us read. It blew me away. I give it 5 stars, as if there was any doubt. America's first official exposure to Nausicaa and director Hayao Miyazaki was a massively edited version retitled Warriors of the Wind. This legendary crime against art removed 30 minutes of the film and invented all new dialogue. Miyazaki was so appalled it was 15 years before he licensed any of his other films to a U.S. distributor. Today, as with the other films from Studio Ghibli, Disney has released this movie for North American audiences with a first-class English voice cast, including Patrick Stewart, Uma Thurman, and James Olmos. I was very familiar with the Japanese voices for this, and I thought I would resist listening to it in English, but actually I found the dub quite decent. Bonus features include English cast interviews and trailers, plus a run-through of Miyazaki's original storyboards with the final film soundtrack. It's such a nicely put-together DVD that I could kiss them for it, or at least retire my aging Laserdisc. The story contains some violence, gunplay, swordplay, blood and death, which may not make it appropriate for the younger grandkids. Miyazaki's finished manga is different from his movie, considerably longer and much more complex. There, the war is between the large kingdoms of Tolmekia and Doruk, and both the Valley of the Wind and Pejete are caught up in the middle of the fight for ancient science. All sides of the conflict show fissures in their own ranks, and there are many more characters. It expands the role of the technology from the past, the role of the Omu as guardians of the forest, and Nausicaa as the prophesied savior well beyond where the movie goes. The manga is both exciting and thoughtful, and pretty well drawn, by the way, and definitely worth reading. The Nausicaa manga is still available from Viz in 5-volume collection. I actually bought it back when it was published in American comic book-sized pieces from 1990 to 1996.
There's a heck of a nice view up here. You can see Mount Humphreys, that's Arizona's tallest peak. That's on the other side of this, which is the Verde Valley. And you can see the Red Rock Wilderness area over there, and all the way to Mount Kendrick, and then Mount Williams. That'd be Bear Mountain out there, where I'm pretty sure I recorded a video where I actually mentioned seeing wood shoot from there. So, thanks for listening.